Welcome to the 22nd episode of Rivanna Review, a program of stories, essays, art, and book reviews. My name is Robert Boucheron. I will be your host for a half hour of reading aloud with illustrations, and author photographs. The print magazine, Rivanna Review, is published 4 times a year in Charlottesville, Virginia, on the Rivanna River. The magazine is available in bookstores on the Main Street Mall in Charlottesville and elsewhere in Virginia. You can order a copy or a subscription from the website, rivannareview.com. Contributors to the magazine live all over the world, and they write about places far and wide. This episode has a story set in an old theater where actors rehearse, and a story set in upstate New York where an elderly woman steals a car. Christy Bell remembers the singer-songwriter Jimmy Buffett, and Tess Dalrymple talks about cowboys with vintage photographs. A book review visits a magical island in Michigan and a family of healing women. Another book review visits old ladies who meet for lunch in New York City for 30 years.
Story opening soon by K.A. Kenny. Cars splashed waves onto sidewalks from puddles and fast-flowing gutters. The wind-blown rain soaked Kaylee's dress and shoes as she ran. Ducking between yellow brick buildings on a narrow walking street, she leaned on the lee side. The shifting wind blew harder, driving the downpour horizontal. Through the rain, she spotted an abandoned theater and dashed under the marquee. All she could see beyond her shelter were curtains of shifting gray. Lightning flashed, followed by rumbling and a resounding crash. It came again. How long before the storm passed and she could head home? Cupping her eyes against the shadowed glass, she scanned the vacant lobby's empty concession stand, upset refuse bin, and yellowed playbills in glass-fronted cases. She pulled the handle and the door opened. A musty odor of mildew and mold hung heavy in the humid lobby. Pink and tan paths worn threadbare in the once red carpet arced around both ends of the concession stand and to a set of double doors. The auditorium was cold and dark. In the place she gathered her thoughts without drawing attention. Steady plink, plink, plinking echoed hollow from an unseen bucket. The faint glow from the exit signs illuminated rows of shadowy seats and an aisle sloping down to the stage. Kaylee chose an aisle seat in the 4th row. As her eyes adjusted, she noted scattered trash and seats with torn upholstery. Dimly lit, the bare stage had a card table, 2 metal folding chairs, and a floor lamp with a small shade. Something scurried below the front of the stage. A rat! Maybe Tim, Kaylee said, then hung her head. She drew a crumpled tissue from her leather purse and touched it below her eyes. How could Tim have been so cheerful and totally disregard her feelings? Was it that easy for him to dismiss her? Was the invitation to their wedding a way of telling her that he'd forgotten their kisses? Visions of picnics and kite flying, swimming together and running naked in the surf, all felt like movies now, so that she'd seen with others. She feared hearing him laugh now in the harmony with Stacy. Would Kaylee ever laugh again? She shook her head. Ancient floorboards creaked in the dark. Then the stage lights came up full. Kaylee's hand flew above her eyes to block the glare. A lanky young man in faded jeans and an untucked white t-shirt stepped to the card table. The metal chair rattled as he sat. Rubbing his smooth face with one hand, he turned on the floor lamp with the other and sorted through the sheaf of papers. Focusing on one sheet, he crossed his legs and leaned back. His lips moved as he read. A gray-haired woman in a loose smock walked from the side of the stage and down the steps to the front row. She nodded to Kaylee with a smile and looked at the man on the stage. Will Jenna be joining us? She texted that her track is flooded. She's stuck between the Harrison and Manhattan transfer stations. The woman leaned one arm across the seat and turned to Kaylee. Excuse me, if you can spare a few minutes, would you mind sitting in and reading a few lines for Justin? Just until Jenna arrives. Kaylee sat up embarrassed and thought about leaving. The woman leaned forward and said, "You know, my dear, life goes on." "Excuse me, what did you say?" "The play we're rehearsing. My dear, life goes on. You might have heard of it. It's by a local playwright." "Oh, of course, I'm sorry. My mind was on something else." She introduced herself, and Justin handed her the script for Jenna's part. Absorbed with reviewing her lines, Kaylee failed to notice a transformation that was occurring on the stage. When she lowered the script, she saw that the card table had grown larger. Its legs were polished carved wood, and it had acquired a white lace cover. Her folding chair had become an armchair upholstered in brocade. The young man was wearing a white dinner jacket, and she a strapless black evening gown. The floor lamp had become a glittering crystal chandelier, suspended above the table, and its light reflected off the polished, newly fitted boards on the stage. Before she could speak, heavy stage curtains lifted to reveal a packed auditorium abuzz with whispering, well-dressed patrons. Kaylee stared dumbstruck until she realized everyone was waiting for her to speak the opening line.
Story, The Getaway Driver by Charlie Newman Johnson, read by Charlie Newman Johnson. Friday morning, Marianne woke before the alarm, fetched a backpack, and stowed supplies. 3 apples, 5 LaCroix, an AM/PM pill organizer, a bottle of ibuprofen, and a bar of dark chocolate. She considered leaving the iPhone Abby had bought her last year, but threw it in anyway. The backpack was heavy. She had never been a large woman, and she'd been feeling smaller the last few years. She took the backpack to the empty front room to wait and watch through the curtains. Jim Fergus came out, started his car, and went back inside. Marianne quickly stepped out the door and locked it, a precious 10 seconds. She ran down the front walk, her boots crunching the half-inch of snow. She looked left, but not right, and crossed the street. She wrenched open the door to the Beetle, threw herself inside. Her hip complained, but she ignored it. Seatbelt on, hands on the wheel. It hadn't been all that long since she drove. She had a minute and a half still. She reached down to take the car out of park. She screamed in frustration. The little car had a stick shift. It had been more than 2 decades since Saul Saab had died, and she couldn't imagine herself making this car move. She tried anyway. The car stalled, and Marianne slammed her fist on the wheel, hard enough to honk the horn. She started the motor again. The car almost went, then shook violently and stalled. She turned the key, and the motor revved. One more try. A heavy gloved hand rattled the passenger window. "Marianne, what are you doing?" Jim Fergus sounded farther away than he was. "I can take you to the store if you need." Clutch in, brake off, little bit of gas, clutch up, gas down. The car began to move forward, bucking as she fumbled with the clutch. Jim tried to yank the passenger side door open. The locked handle clunked uselessly. He ran alongside the car in his socks, shouting, but Marianne finally lurched up the hill, leaving him behind in the snow. Despite stalling twice at stop signs, Marianne made it to Highway 8 going north to Utica. There she would take the New York State Thruway west if the Beetle cooperated. As she shifted into 5th, she caught her breath. Her bag started buzzing in Syracuse. Still driving uncertainly, she only fished out the phone after the 4th set of buzzes. 4 missed calls, 3 from Abby. 1 voicemail from Abby. Hey, Mom, it's Abby. Hey, Mr. Fergus across the street, he says you borrowed his car without asking. He says he thinks you need something at the store and are too stubborn to ask, but you've been gone for a while. He says he's worried you crashed again. He says he doesn't want to call the cops because of your license, but, he's worried. I'm worried. Call me. Love you. Bye. The next message, somewhere past Rochester, was more to the point. Mom, Mr. Fergus is going to call the police in 10 minutes if he doesn't hear from you. He's worried and also getting pretty upset. Call me back, or call him first. Love you. Bye. 15 minutes later, he called the police, Mom. Just letting you know. God, I hope you're okay. I can tell your phone is on because it's ringing, but You probably left it behind. I don't know why I bought it. Please, be alive. Bye. Love you. Bye. At the Clarence Travel Plaza near Buffalo, Marian stopped for a snack. She overheard a middle-aged man with a preposterous mustache chatting up a clerk. Hey, Phyllis, you hear today's crazy story? Some old bird in Washington Mills stole a car. Red something or other. Mini Cooper, maybe? Don't remember. Suddenly dizzy, Marian tried to catch her balance on a display rack of eyewear. A shower of sunglasses clattered to the floor. She bent over to pick them up, but the man gallantly beat her to it, putting them in the rack with utter disregard to style or price. Can you believe it, lady? He addressed Marian loudly. An old lady like you, stealing someone's car. The world these days, huh? Excuse me, Marian said, taking a pair of glasses from him. She shuffled away, head down. Everyone was staring at her. The smell of Tim Hortons donuts was oppressive. An undercover cop walked right at her.
Essay, Lovely Cruise by Christy Bell. My sister Amy and I huddled around the console stereo in the living room when Mama's head appeared in the doorway. I grabbed Amy's hand to keep her from yanking the needle off the record. What are y'all listening to? Mama held a dishcloth stained and frayed at one edge. I thought I heard some cussin'. Oh, no, ma'am. I shook my head, wide-eyed, innocent. It's one of Daddy's records. The reassuring twang of a rhythm guitar emerged from the console stereo. Jimmy Buffett! Born in 1946 in Pascagoula, Mississippi, Buffett entered an optimistic post-World War II America. My father's birthday was a few months before. Buffett grew up in the literal son of a sailor, a marine engineer. While Buffett started his working life in a shipyard in Pascagoula, my father spent his late teens in the Vietnam-era Navy. They both had wanderlust as young men. Buffett sailed and piloted his private plane to foreign shores, while Dad worked his way into a job as a construction foreman that ferried him throughout the Southeast. For Mama, I held up the album jacket, cream-colored and innocuous, a compass on the front. The back featured a balding man in a skimpy swimsuit. See, it's country, I said. Mama approved of two kinds of music for our consumption, gospel preferred and country tolerated. She wavered in the doorway, then retreated to the kitchen. That was close, Amy whispered. We're lucky he wasn't singing about rum or strippers right then. What's a stripper? I asked. Amy was 2.5 years older and had just started high school, so she ought to know. I didn't wait for her answer, but lay on my back on the brown shag carpet, a band of South Alabama sunlight across my eyes, and daydreamed about pirates. If I was a child of the Pentecostal church by nurture, I was a child of the Gulf of Mexico by nature. I connected with the music on my dad's album. Jimmy Buffett sang about white sandy coasts I knew, Biloxi and Pensacola, and others I dreamed about, the blue-green waters of the Florida Keys, Havana, Tampico. Amy and I pleaded with our parents to drive us to Panama City, Florida every year, starting with whimpers around spring break and crescendoing into summer when it became the full siren song of childish angst. Sometimes, not often enough, they piled us kids and the coolers and last year's deflated floats into our big blue station wagon to caravan with 2 or 3 carloads of cousins down the back roads to the pristine edge of the Gulf Coast. Amy liked to smear baby oil on her sin and pretend not to watch the boys. I liked to lie face down on a float in the shallows and feel the waves lap me to and fro, shore and sand, in and out of consciousness. I joined the Navy at age 18 and set out on my own adventures, keeping my passion for Buffett's music into the start of my Navy career. His songs whetted my appetite for the lifestyle they described. I thought of him as a kind of laid-back Hemingway, swashbuckling his way through exotic lands, sometimes one step ahead of the law, often in the company of a beautiful woman. When I stepped off a plane onto the frozen tarmac at O'Hare, Havana Daydreamin' kept me from falling. A Sony Walkman transported me from North Chicago, where I attended Navy electronics training, back down to the coast and anchored me to the shore until I could physically get back. In Pensacola, my first duty station after training, I read Tales from Margaritaville and all but lived on the beach, more than once, falling asleep to gull cries and sea oats rustling over my head. I drove from Pensacola to the Florida Keys for a vacation and understood the lyric, living and dying, in three-quarter time. Essay, Cowboys by Tess Dalrymple. The word cowboy was used in the British Isles from 1820 to describe young boys who tended the family or community cows, though cowherd was older. In America, cowboy was in use by 1849, although it was not used in all locations. Men who drove cattle for a living in the Southwest were called cowhands, drovers, or stockmen. Buckaroo came from the Spanish vaquero, from vaca for cow. The area was part of Mexico until 1848. A cowboy often began work as an adolescent. Historically, cowboys earned wages as soon as they developed sufficient skill to be hired, as young as 12 or 13. Black cowboys accounted for up to 25% of workers in the range cattle industry from the 1860s. In the 1880s, it became an insult in the Southwest to call someone a cowboy, as it suggested he was a horse thief, robber, or outlaw. Cattlemen were generally herders or ranchers. The first large-scale effort to drive cattle from Texas to the nearest railhead for shipment to Chicago occurred in 1866, when Texas ranchers banded together to drive their cattle to the closest point that railroad tracks reached, which at that time was Sedalia, Missouri. In 1867, a cattle shipping facility was built west of farm country around the railhead at Abilene, Kansas. The route from Texas to Abilene became known as the Chisholm Trail, after Jesse Chisholm, who marked out the route. Other trails were the Great Western to Dodge City, Kansas, and the Goodnight Loving to Denver. Dodge City became the largest cattle town, and Chicago became the largest center for meat packing. On average, a herd could maintain a healthy weight, moving about 15 miles per day. This pace meant that it took as long as 2 months to travel from a home ranch to a railhead. A herd of cattle on a drive numbered about 3,000. A crew of at least 10 cowboys was needed, with 3 horses per cowboy. Cowboys worked in shifts to watch the cattle 24 hours a day, herding them in the right direction by day, and watching them at night to prevent stampedes and theft. The wrangler on a cattle drive was often a very young cowboy or one of lower social status. The wrangler took charge of the herd of spare horses. The cook drove a chuck wagon, usually pulled by oxen. The cook was a respected member of the crew. He was also in charge of medical supplies and administered first aid. Barbed wire, an innovation of the 1880s, allowed cattle to be fenced to prevent overgrazing. During the harsh winter of 1886 to 1887, hundreds of thousands of cattle died, leading to collapse of the cattle industry. By the 1890s, barbed wire was standard, railroads had expanded to cover most of the nation, and meat packing plants were built closer to major ranching areas. The age of the open range was gone, and large cattle drives were over. The singing cowboy of radio and Hollywood arrived in the 1920s. Book review by Yvonne Surratt, The Waters by Bonnie Jo Campbell. Bonnie Jo Campbell, to quote from her website, lives with her husband and donkeys in rural Michigan. Born in Kalamazoo in 1962, she has published 7 other books, including Mothers Tell Your Daughters, a 2015 collection of stories. She teaches creative writing at several American colleges and universities. In The Waters, the setting is the focus and the characters are its support, telling its story through their actions and histories. The setting is a small Michigan town in the 1990s. Like many American communities at the time, it has lost its manufacturing base, and big agriculture has gobbled up its small family farms and poisoned the environment. The men in the town are full of despair and prone to violence, no longer sure of their worth in the world. One woman, an elderly healer, revered as a witch and reviled as an abortionist, has saved the last of the natural places there. She lives on an island in a swampy bog known as the Waters, dispensing cures made from plants and animals around her. She has 3 daughters who have left, but she never leaves the island. Living with her is a granddaughter named Donkey, whose real name is Dorothy, as in The Wizard of Oz. Donkey is a math prodigy who teaches herself from books sent by her aunt, but she has no real knowledge of the outside world or of men. Donkey's mother, Rose Thorne, makes few visits to her daughter, and it's her last one that starts the action in the Waters. Rose is the connection between the 2 worlds, and her visit, when Donkey is 12, is both catastrophic and healing for all the residents. The story of Rose Thorne and her constant longing for Titus, the town's favorite son, and his for her, is not an original one. Neither is the story of America in decline, or the account of the townsmen who use their power to destroy. They crush nature wherever they go, underscoring the obliteration of the natural rural landscape. These are well-known subjects: rape, loss, and the inability of men and women to understand one another. What is thoroughly original in The Waters is Campbell's telling. Her prose is transcendent. The long descriptions of the Waters and its inhabitants, plants, humans, and animals, are rich in detail. Though the healer, herself Zook, and her 3 daughters resemble a gathering of fairy godmothers, they are uniquely themselves. Their love for one another and Donkey, an isolated genus with too much responsibility and too many calamities, is a magical brew concocted from shared history and dreams. The novel goes as its own pace. You can't hurry it along. Tragedies and misfortunes unfold with deliberate unhurriedness, the way filmmakers show accidents or murders in slow motion. While The Waters is mostly grim, there is a sprinkling of enchanted dust that lifts it out of the misery that constantly threatens to engulf it. Magic happens. Donkey communicates with animals. Rose Thorne retreats into the Oz books. People's dreams rise out of them and intertwine with those of others. The love between Rose Thorne and Titus never wanes. As a healer in her own way, Rose uses her presence to comfort the people of the town. Her plight paves the way through which the men can enter the women's world and be transformed. Campbell has been called a writer of Midwestern Gothic and rural noir. These are apt labels, especially the Gothic element of entrapment in a bleak world. In The Waters, the rural noir is external: money worries, lack of health care, loss of beauty, and violence. Balanced against these are the characters' internal strengths: love, healing, and hope.
Book review by Edward Lineberry. Ladies' Lunch by Lore Siegel. Lore Siegel, born in Vienna in 1928, is a proficient novelist, short story writer, and translator. Her 2008 novel, Shakespeare's Kitchen, was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize, and many of the stories in this, her 13th collection, appeared in The New Yorker. The first section of this book is a series of linked stories about a group of retired women who regularly meet for lunch. The action never takes place at the lunches. Instead, we are given scenes that will be the ladies' topic of conversation, important or quotidian moments in the lives of this group of friends. Quote, "The February ladies' lunch met at Ruth's Riverside apartment. Ladies' lunch is pronounced in quotation marks. The 5 women have grown old coming together every other month or so for the last 30 or more years around one another's tables," end quote. More concerned with memory and remembrance, the narrative is low information. There are no detailed backstories for these characters, no overarching structure to their lives or beliefs or experiences, only moments of change. Siegel is a master at showing these small moments. In the opening story, Ruth, Frank, and Dario, Ruth recounts, over a series of lunches, her missed connections with Frank. Meeting at a Shiva, with a shared appreciation of the sculpture, Dario D'Alessio, Ruth invites Frank to her apartment, but Frank has a conflict and has to reschedule. Over time, Ruth extends more invitations, which Frank accepts, but continues to make excuses before the arranged meetings, avoiding Ruth. Friends tell Ruth, he says he's afraid of you, but Ruth can't let go of the connection. Quote, "It had irritated her," Ruth told the friends at lunch, to find herself waiting for Frank to call. The prospect of telling her old Dario stories, she said, had opened a window onto such a chunk of time, end quote. Her friends press Ruth in Frank's absence, quote, "Tell us a D'Alessio stories you were going to tell Frank Bruno," end quote. Ruth is a woman with stories to tell, stories unlocked by chance encounters, and the ladies' lunch is a final destination for all of these memories, a last hope of sorts, when no other audience is available. Even in the telling of the D'Alessio stories, Ruth gains new material in the excuses Frank continues to deploy. The ladies wonder if his excuses are genuine or fabricated. Quote, "Maybe there really was a fire," end quote. In Soft Sculpture, Ilka and Bridget, two members of the ladies' lunch, reminisce about a tortoise that Ilka had as a child. Forced to flee her childhood home in Nazi Germany when, quote, "3 brown shirts walked in and gave us 24 hours to be out," unquote. Ilka at first cannot recall the word for tortoise, and then can't recall if she brought the pet with her as a refugee. In this brief, almost fragmented story, told through dialogue with little insight into the minds and thoughts of the characters, the tortoise becomes the most meaningful element of her memory, and also the one piece Ilka is unable to supply all the details for. What happened is less important than what's remembered, what will make it into the stories she tells her friends. Many of the characters are Holocaust survivors, and they deal with a topic with a quiet intensity. Making Good puts Holocaust survivors in a roundtable, organized by a rabbi, with post-war German immigrants. It's a slow burn.